Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com, and today we're going to be talking about pilot watches. In particular, we'll be looking at a couple of pilot watches from Laco. Laco, in one form or another, has been making pilot watches since the 1920s, and they made watches for the German war machine during World War II. They're still in business today. They were known as Laco and Company back then. Now it's a contraction, and it's now known as Laco. But it's still the same company making pilot watches in today's times. What I'd like to focus on in particular today is answering a question that we get quite often in that what is the difference between these two sets of pilot watches that you see, this set here and this set here. Besides the dials being different, there is a market price difference. The two on the right are 2.5 times the cost of the two on the left. And we get people asking us, hey, they look the same, and from 5 feet away they sure do look the same, but why are their prices so different? And today I'm going to try to answer that question. So from the watches that you see here, I have two watches of the lower cost variety, roughly at the time of this recording around €300, and two watches of the higher price variety, again at the time of this is around €850. So the only differences between this and this are strictly the dials. This is what's known as an A dial, this is what's known as a B dial or a navigator's dial. The minutes being the more important part of the dial for a navigator, so the minutes are accentuated, and the hour numbers, which are in this inner semicircle here, are less important and they are smaller. And the same follows for the more expensive variety that you see over here, A dial, B dial. So right from the start, I'm going to eliminate these two from our conversation, but I will give you just a quick close-up of what they look like so you can see them. Again, this is the less expensive one, this is the more expensive one. I'm going to focus on the B dials simply because they tend to be more popular, and also I only need to really go through this conversation once, and you can apply everything I say to these two in my hand as well. So here are the two watches up close. I'm going to keep the less expensive one in my left hand and the more expensive one in my right hand. In my left we have the Laco Aachen, A-A-C-H-E-N, part number 861690. In my right hand is the Paderborn 861749, around €850. So what I'd like to do is discuss the watches piece by piece, and I think maybe I'll start from the inside and work my way out. I'm not going to open them, but I'll talk about everything on the inside, and I'll work my way all the way out to the straps, and so we can really kind of see what makes them different and maybe what makes one worth more than the other. So for starters, on the inside, the less expensive model uses a Miyota, which is a Japanese company. It's a Miyota movement. It's a caliber 821A. It's an automatic movement, hand winding, so you can wind it, non-hacking. So when you pull out the crown to set the time, the seconds hand does not stop. Okay. You'll notice there are no dates on any of these watches because being pilot's watches, date is not extremely important. Time is important. So inside the watch, here's a case back shot of the Miyota 821A. You can see it says automatic 21 joules, Laco watches, made in Germany. Laco has taken the movement, added their own custom rotor, and cased it in the watch. It's a snapback case, water resistant to 5 atmospheres. It's a great movement, certainly a lower cost movement than a Swiss option, but it's a great reliable movement, and that helps them keep the cost down on this watch. In comparison, the more expensive Paderborn uses what's coined a Laco 24 movement, which according to Laco's website is currently an ETA 2824-2. It's also a pushback watch, water resistance not being extremely important on a watch like this. And it's got, now you get into historically accurate markings on the back. It's a Flieger watch, and then it's got various numbers on it, the manufacturer, who is Laco, It's got that FL23883, which is again is a historical marking, and it's echoed on the case itself, engraved. And also you'll see the work number, the work, which is Laco. It's a Laco movement. Even though it's an ETA, Laco has switched to calling all their movements basically Laco movements with a designation. I should have mentioned this is a Laco 21, which again was the Miyota 821A according to Laco's website. This is the Laco 24, which is the Swiss ETA. So the Swiss ETA, the 25 joule automatic movement, it's a smoother wind, it hacks, it's automatic, it hand winds, it hacks. And in industry, the Swiss are considered, usually to have the best watch movements. So here you're getting, a high quality movement. Still tells time, just like this one, just more expensive because of that movement that's in it. Okay. Next, we'll talk about dials, and we can hold them both next to each other so you can see them at the same time. One item that pops out at you is that the one in my left has the Laco company name and their date 1925 written in the dial, on the dial, and this one has nothing. This is what's known as a sterile dial. There's even made in Germany on this one. You can see it right at the bottom. These are all made in Germany. All 4 watches I've shown you are made in Germany. But this one says nothing. Why? Because there should be nothing on the dial to distract a pilot from telling the time. The watch is to tell time, not to advertise. And the U.S. military was the same way. For many years, all watches worn by the military were what they call sterile dials. No company markings on the dial at all. Another difference you'll see is the Loom Paint that's used. This one is certainly slightly more yellowish, and this one is whitish. But they both glow, and they glow quite well. Now I'll just flip off the light for a split second. See? Both really give a good lume, and I'm not charging these. These are just under a regular fluorescent light. Next, we'll talk about the hands. So if you can look at the hands, obviously the hands on both of them are loomed. But on the less expensive one, they're stamped black sword-type hands with luminescence on them. And on the right, these are actually blued hands. They are, I don't know if we can get in there real tight. You can see the hands are blue. They are thermally blued. Bluing is a process that's used to harden steel. It's difficult to maintain. It takes an expert's touch. As the steel is heated, it starts to turn through a rainbow of colors, and when it hits the blue family, it will go, basically, I believe it goes from steel through blue quite quickly to colors that aren't so attractive. So they have to be very careful and remove them from the heat at just the right time to get that blue consistency in the hands. So again, it's a much more laborious process to make the hands on this watch. The hands on this watch still tell the time just fine, but again, there's just not as much in it as there is on the Paderborn. Next, we'll talk about the case. Both are 42 millimeter, both are around 11 to 12 millimeters thick. This is a brushed steel case, stainless steel brushed. And this is more of a blasted case. It's got a little bit, definitely has more finishing to it. And it takes on more of a dull gray titanium hue. You can see it. More diffuse, more specular. You really don't see, reflections. It's definitely a more matte or gray appearance. And I'll just do the same one with this, same shot. I'll rotate it. Now let's talk about the lugs of the watch, the part that actually holds the strap to the watch. You can see on the more expensive one, which is on top, they're again more historically accurate. They're almost like wire lugs, but they're part of the case. They're a cast part of the case that stick out. And the less expensive version has more of a bulky lug that you might see on today's watches. And now finally the crown. So the crown on the more expensive model is more of a diamond knurled crown. You can see it starts out with a large diameter and then progressively gets smaller as it comes into the case. It's nicely done. And then on the Miyota base model, or the Akin, it's an onion crown. Excuse me, it's a knurled crown. Not exactly an onion, but it's more of a standard crown that you would see again on a watch today. And this is made for easy grip, because pilots' watches back in World War II time were, you know, mechanical hand wound, so it had to be easy to grip. So this is much easier to grip with a gloved hand. It should also be noted that watches back then generally were also much larger, whereas these are 42 millimeter watches. You know, pilots would wear 55 millimeter watches, and they would actually strap them around their jacket rather than wear them on the wrist. Last, we'll talk about the strap. You can see on the Akin, the strap is a reddish brown, and on the Paderborn, it is more of an aviator's brown or an aviator's leather. Both are riveted straps, both are sewn straps, but there are minor differences, obviously, in color and in quality. This strap on the left is a little firmer than the strap on the right. So this would be so this would be considered a higher quality strap for sure. The buckles are both signed buckles. But I don't know if you could see it on video, but the one in my right is actually engraved, where the one on my left is actually just etched, and laser etched. They're both the same length strap. They'll fit a decent sized wrist, around 120 by 80. The difference in appearance, you know, you can see it now that you think about it. You know, you can see this is definitely more of a, I don't know, an orange or a red, and then this is really more of a true brown. The last thing would be the crystal, and maybe the crystal should have come before the strap. They both use sapphire. The crystal on the Akin is a flat sapphire, so if I kind of tilt it like that, you can see there's really no protrusion. It is a flat sapphire crystal. This is actually a nice addition. Laco switched to make the Akin and the Augsburg, which was the A-dial version of the same watch. This one, they made these guys sapphire. They made the switch from mineral to sapphire a couple of years ago. Increased the price a little bit, but well worth it, because really there's nothing here to protect the watch. There's no bezel to say. It's really, you know, pilots' watches are all dial, all crystal. So a 42 millimeter pilot's watch wears larger because there's nothing around the dial to really take up any of the space, and there's really nothing around the dial to protect the crystal. So going to sapphire was a nice change for them. It was a good idea. And then on the Paderborn, you can probably see as I'm moving it, you see the reflection. This is a slightly domed crystal. So sapphire, but it's domed out about a millimeter. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see it on film because, well, it's clear. But it domes out about a millimeter. It's a beautiful crystal, and when it's delinted and clean, it's pretty clean now, the crystal really disappears from the watch. It's really a gorgeous piece. So all those items tallied up is what makes the difference in price in these two models. If you're on a budget, this is the way to go. You know, €300 as opposed to the €850. But if you want an authentic, I use the term loosely, or replica, because these are replicas. They're replicas of watches that were made, you know, 60, 70 years ago. But they're not replicas in the fact that they are fakes. This would be the way to go. This is a real, true representation of what watches were back then, albeit a little bit smaller. Maybe an upgraded movement inside, because this is an automatic. But Laco does also make hand-winding fliegers in the same case size. But this would be the way to go. But I always tell people, you know, if you're looking to save a bit, there's nothing wrong with this one. It is a gorgeous watch. And on your wrist, 99% of the people you meet will not know the difference if you wore this one or if you wore this one. The only person that's going to know is you. And if it makes a difference to you, then you know what your choice is going to be. But they're both beautiful on the wrist, and both will serve their purpose, telling time quite easily. Before we go, I'm just going to bring in the A-dial versions again real fast. So this is the Augsburg in my left hand. This is the less expensive one, and this is the Munster or Munster. This is the more expensive one. Again, everything I said applies here. Blued hands, dome crystal, ETA movement, crown, case, finishing, markings, lugs, strap, all the same. The only thing they've done different between these two watches is, and the two watches so before, are dial changes. A-dials. These are A-dials. The other ones that are a little bit more busy are B-dials or navigator dials. So that finishes up our discussion on Laco pilot watches, in particular the differences between the less expensive Miyota-based models and the more expensive ETA-based models. Again, I want to reiterate, they are all made in Germany by Laco, and even the ones that are Sterile Dial are made in Germany, even though they don't even say it on the dial, because that's how important a Sterile Dial is for historical accuracy. If you have any questions, please put them below, and I'll be sure to answer them. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you next time. This has been Mark from LongIslandWatch.com. Thank you.